So let's just breathe that in for a moment as we move into this part of our service. Our theme for the month is the prayer of power, the prayer of power, the prayer of power. And we've been talking about spiritual mind treatment, which is the affirmative prayer that we use in Science of Mind. And it is the prayer of power when we use it correctly. It is the prayer of power when we use spiritual mind treatment with belief and acceptance. With belief and acceptance, that's the prayer of power. Belief and acceptance, and the acceptance is the knowing that the prayer is already answered before we ever prayed it. And so that's what we are talking about throughout the month. We know, I'll just remind you that we have 5 steps to treatment, and they are recognition, unification, realization, thanksgiving, and release. And last week we were talking about recognition. That's where we were recognizing God as the only power, the only source, the only intelligence, the divine essence that just is, the only thing that is. And this week, we're talking about unification, moving into oneness with that all that is. Moving into oneness with the all that is. The first 2 steps of treatment are so important. Recognizing God as being the all that is and believing that, and then allowing our belief to move into that place of knowing that God is all there is. And then unifying with the all that is. The first 2 steps are really important steps, but the second step, I believe, is the most important step. That is our unification, our moving into that place of being one with the all that is. And when we're in that place of being one with the all that is, then anything that happens, anything that comes through us in speaking the word and saying our prayer is the word of God that's being spoken through us, because we are at one with God. And so that's what we are I'm stressing today, and stressing as you go through your life in using spiritual mind treatment, is just knowing recognition is very important, and unification is I think even more important. Unifying with God, being unified with God, being at one, and knowing, being consciously at one with God, because we are made in the image and likeness and out of God itself, and there's nothing that can separate us except our sense of separation, or our belief in separation. And so what we want to do is to heal that sense of separation, heal that belief in separation, and to know that we are at one with God, and to live our lives that way. And so as we go through this month of talking about spiritual mind treatment and how to use spiritual mind treatment, and importantly, what I'd like us to know is how to live the 5 steps of treatment. How to live the 5 steps of treatment. Last week, as I said, we talked about recognition and how to walk through our lives, recognizing that God is all there is, recognizing that God is in everyone and in everything. And this week, I'd like us to walk through this time of being unified, of knowing that we are at one. We are at one with God always. We are at one with God always. There's a song, it's really a chant by Erica Luckett and her partner. The name of the song is There's Only One Life. There's only one life. And the entire song, the entire chant goes through the first 2 steps of treatment. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. There's only one life. That life is God's life. Recognition. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. That life is my life now. Unification. And so that's something I'd like you to learn, just remember and use for yourself throughout the day, throughout your life. There's only one life. No matter what's going on, we can remind ourselves there's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life. That life is my life right here and right now. That's what we need to know about treatment, to the first 2 steps of treatment, and about the unification step of treatment. And so my topic today is what do you see in the mirror? What do you see in the mirror? And I think the reading said it all, that Ernest Holmes says that life is like a mirror. It reflects back to us as conditions, whatever we think into it, whatever images of whatever we think into it. Life is like a mirror. It reflects back to us as conditions, images of whatever we think into it. whatever we think into it. And so we have to be mindful of what we're thinking, mindful of what we're doing, mindful of not only our specific thought or any one particular thought, but the tendency of our thought, the pattern of our thought, the pattern of our thinking as we go through our lives. And the way that we can keep up with that is just look at what our experiences are. Because life is like a mirror. It's always reflecting back to us what our thinking is. So if you don't know what your thinking has been, look at what your experiences are today. Look at what your experiences are today. And when we start to look at if I'm experiencing anger, if I'm experiencing resentment, if I'm experiencing chaos, if I'm experiencing love, if I'm experiencing joy, if I'm experiencing peace, that's a result. That's an image of what I've been thinking into. That's an image of the tendency of my thoughts. And so the big question for us is, when we look at what we see in the mirror, then what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? That's the big question for each one of us. If what we're seeing in that mirror, if what is being reflected back to us is not something we want, what are we going to do about it? Besides complain. That's not the way to get it to change, because that takes our tendency of thought off into a whole different direction, And then another whole reflection starts coming back to us. And so I'm inviting you to really start to look at, what are you seeing in the mirror? What do you see in the mirror? And recognize that whatever you're seeing is a reflection. It's a reflection of what you're thinking into it, the tendency of your thoughts. You know, there's an agape choir song that I think "Standing on Solid Ground" is the name of it. And some of the words go, I looked in the mirror and what did I see? I saw pure spirit staring back at me. When did this happen? When did pure spirit merge with mine? When did spirit merge with me? When did spirit merge with me? It was before the beginning of time. I looked in the mirror and what did I see? I saw pure spirit staring back at me. I looked in the mirror and what did I see? I saw pure spirit staring back at me. Think about that. When we look in the mirror, what do we see? When we look in the mirror, can we say that we see pure spirit staring back at us? Can we say that we see pure spirit staring back at us? And maybe there are times we can, maybe there are times we can't. You know, it kind of waffles sometimes, depends on what's going on with us. But one way that we can ensure that this happens is to make sure that we are doing our spiritual practice, making sure that we are courting that spirit, making sure that we are spending more and more time with that spirit, making sure that we are consciously seeking to be in that place of unification, making sure that we are constantly walking through our day with, there's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. And so as we go through that, just using that as an affirmation, and our prayer, and then doing our spiritual practice with our meditation, with our visioning, with our whatever other tools that we use as a part of our spiritual practice. When we can go through our lives using these as a part of our spiritual practice, then we can look in the mirror and what do we see? We see pure spirit staring back at me. That's what I see when I look in the mirror. And so I'm inviting you today to start with that. Start using that chant, that affirmation. Start with that. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. And if you don't want to use that whole thing, just something that really works for you, something that really you can believe and you can really use. And so I'm inviting you to start with that. Start with God. That's always the place to start. That's always the place to start when we want to make sure that what we see in the mirror reflects what we would like that mirror to reflect. What that mirror is reflecting back to us is what we'd like that mirror to reflect back to us. And so I invite you to start with God. Start with your spiritual practice. Start with, what do I see when I look in the mirror? What do I see when I look in the mirror? Am I not seeing what I'd like to see? And again, starting with our experiences, starting with what's going on in our lives, starting with what's going on in our day-to-day interactions with other people, with each other. When we're not seeing what it is we want to see, when we're not experiencing what it is we want to experience, then we're not seeing pure spirit staring back at me. And so that's what I'm asking you to do. Start now. Start now with there's only one life. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life right here and right now. And then the second thing is to start to look at how we are interacting with others. What are we attracting into our lives? What are our experiences like? Are we attracting more peace? Are we attracting more abundance and prosperity? Are we attracting better health? Are we attracting the kinds of things that we really want in our lives? Are we attracting more love? Because in order to attract more love, we have to be that which we wish to experience. We have to be love. We can't walk around talking about divisive things, living in a divisive way, living in a way that's judgmental, living in a way that is not a place of unity, a place of unification, and then expect to experience unification and unity in our lives. Expect to experience all the good that life has for us, because life is good. God is good. And in order to experience the goodness of God, we have to live like we know that. We have to live like we know that. We have to live from a place of goodness in our own hearts, from a place of love in our own hearts, from a place of peace in our own hearts, from a place of harmony in our own hearts, from a place of harmony in our own thoughts. Our thoughts have to be harmonious. Our thoughts have to be loving. We have to be willing to release judgment and release blame and release divisiveness. Release all that stuff that would separate us. Release confusion. If we're experiencing confusion in our lives, where is there confusion in me? Because life is always, again, reflecting to us the tenor of our thoughts, the tenor of our beliefs. And so if we're experiencing confusion, where is that confusion in me? When we are meeting people, interacting with people who are blaming, who are judgmental, who are antagonistic, where is that in me? When we are watching people even on TV and we are constantly complaining about someone who does something, or someone who doesn't do something, or someone who says something, or whatever the case may be, or when you're dealing with people on Facebook and you're attracting people who are antagonistic, where's that in me? How am I attracting that? Where is that in me? Because it's reflecting me. It's reflecting the tenor of my thoughts. It's reflecting the tenor of my beliefs. And so when we recognize that this is happening, how can I change this? Well, first of all, do I want to change this? Do I want to experience more love? Do I want to experience more harmony? Do I want to experience more order? Do I want to experience more balance? Do I want to have a good life? Do I want to have a good life? Because we believe that there's a power for good in the universe and that anyone can use it. So if there's a power for good, do I want to experience the good that this power is? Then if I do, how do I use it? How do I use it? How do I use it? I changed my thinking, knowing that I can use it, knowing that I can do something different. I changed my thinking, and that's how I changed my life. I engage more in spiritual practice. I bring myself into oneness, into union consciously with the all that is, with the good that God is, with the good that life is, with the good of the universe. And then I open myself up to be that place and that space to which God can work. And that's what we do when we move into that place of unification. We are surrendering our small selves. We're surrendering our personal selves to move into that greater self, That's what we're doing when we are in that place of unification. We're letting go of the smallness, of the littleness, and we're moving into the greater. And that's what I'm inviting you to do. And then the mirror begins to reflect back to us. The mirror begins to reflect back to us the tenor of our thinking, the change in our thinking. We begin to see more and more people are smiling when we meet them. More and more people are being pleasant. More and more people are expressing love. More and more things that just seem to happen out of the clear. Just something, oh, I got a phone call from somebody I didn't expect to get a phone call from. And she was so nice. And she was so pleasant. Or I received a gift, or I received a note, or whatever the case may be. But that came because you changed. That came because you changed, not because the other person did something. It has to happen because of each one of us. It has to happen because of each one of us. What's happening within each one of us. What's happening within each one of us. Ernest Holmes says something like when any needs are met, when supply comes, when opulence and supply comes into our experience, it's not as a result of one thin dime that we receive, but it's a result of the abundance that flows through, the concept of abundance that flows through us. It's not because that one thin dime that we receive that brings that supply to us, that meets our needs. That's just a vehicle. That's just something that is being used. But the supply that comes, the opulence that comes into our experience is a result of the concept of abundance. And the concept of abundance comes from our concept of God, because our concept of God is abundance. Our concept of God is that God is abundance itself. And so we get to experience that through our awareness, through that recognition that God is abundance, through our recognition that God is love, through our recognition that God is peace, through our recognition that God is joy, through our recognition that God is wholeness, through our recognition that God is all there is. When we're in that place, and then we unify with that, then we become that. And that's what the mirror begins to reflect back to us. That's what life begins to reflect back to us. We have more friends. If we want more friends, we got to be a friend. If we want more love, we got to be love. If we want more peace, Holmes says you can't want peace and then live in a place of disturbance. Live in a place of disturbance. If you want peace, you got to be peace. If you want order, you got to be order. You've got to be order. You've got to be order. If you want balance, you've got to be balanced, and you've got to be willing to be balanced. We've got to be willing to be that which we wish to see. And we see it in the mirror of life that is always reflecting itself back to us. And so I'm inviting us all to look at, again, starting with God, starting with connecting and unifying with God, and then recognizing that as we connect with God, everything is God. So then we have to start looking at how we connect with each other, how we connect with the world around us, how we connect with the people around us. And then thirdly, of course, I always invite us to look at how we're connecting with ourselves. How we're connecting with ourselves. How are we treating ourselves? What kind of self-care are we engaged in? How are we taking care of these temples that house God? These body temples that house God. How are we taking care of those? How are we taking care of our hearts? Are our hearts open? Are our hearts receptive? How are we taking care of, what's our self-talk like? What kinds of things are you saying to yourself? What kinds of things are you believing about yourself? What kinds of things, because if you believe that you're made in the image and likeness and out of God, then what kinds of things are you saying about yourself? Because whatever you're saying about yourself, it must be what you're thinking about God and what you believe about God. Because if I am one with God, then I've got to believe that I'm whole, that I'm perfect, that I'm complete. I've got to believe the very best about me. I've got to say the very best about me. I've got to live my life as though I really believe the very best about me. I really believe that I am the best because I am made of the best. So how could it be any other way? And so I invite you to really, really, really start to look at, are we living unification when it comes to God, to others, and importantly, to ourselves? Are we living that unification step? Are we at one with ourselves? Are we really saying there's only one life? That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. So if we believe that life is perfect, then we must believe that our life is perfect. We must believe that that perfection lies within each one of us. That's what unification is all about. That's how we heal our sense of separation. That's how we heal our sense of separation. And that's how that mirror begins to reflect. That mirror begins to reflect the tenor of our thoughts, because when the tenor of our thoughts change, then we begin to see our experiences change. It doesn't get much better than that, I don't think. It doesn't get much better than that. And so I invite you to really look at how are you living your life today? What is that mirror? Really take a good look at. What's the mirror reflecting back to you today? What's the mirror reflecting back to you right now in your life? What is that mirror reflecting back to you right now? Are you satisfied with it? Then if you are, then just say, thank you, God, more, please. Thank you, God, more, please. Thank you, God, more, please. If it's not reflecting back to you what you want, then we know that there's more work for us to do. There's more work for us to do. There's more releasing and letting go of those things that don't serve, releasing and letting go of whatever we're seeing that we don't like. That means that that's not serving us. That means that that's not serving us. Whatever we're seeing that we'd like to have change, that's not serving us. That's not serving us. And we have to want it to change for the highest and the best. And we have to want it to change for the highest and best of all concerned. And we're not looking at how we want it to change in somebody else's life. We're not looking at how we want somebody else to do something different. It's all about us. And on this Mother's Day, no matter what our mothers told us as teenagers, that it's not all about you. It really is. We learn that once we get to be adults and once we start to really do the spiritual practice, it really is all about us. It's all about you. It's all about me in my own life. If I want my life to change, I have to do something different. If I want my life to change, you don't have to do anything different. You don't have to change one bit. You don't have to do any, you don't have to say things differently. You don't have to act differently, because my life changing and me living the life that I want to live is not dependent on how you live yours. It's not dependent on how anybody lives theirs. It's not dependent on any condition. It's not dependent on any circumstance. It's not dependent on any situation. It's not dependent on whether somebody does what we want them to do or doesn't do what we don't want them to do. Whatever the case may be, it's not dependent on any of that. It isn't dependent on any of that. It's dependent on me and how I decide to live my life, how I decide to walk through life, how I decide to how I'm going to feel. And how I live my life cannot be dependent on conditions and circumstances and situations and events, because those kinds of things happen all the time. Situations, circumstances, events that we have no control over, that we can't do anything about. But I can still live a life of peace. I can still live a life of harmony. I can still live a life of balance, because I am at one with the all that is. I am at one with that divine intelligence that knows all, is all. I am at one with that power and that presence and that source. I'm at one with that. That is the only power. And I know that that only power is bigger than any condition. It's bigger than any circumstance. It's bigger than any change that's happening. It's because it is changeless. It is bigger than everything. It is bigger than whatever health condition I may be experiencing. It's bigger than all that stuff that we get caught up in. All the thicket, as Howard Thurman says, in which our hearts get caught. God is bigger than any of that. And so when I know that there's only one life, that life is God's life, that life is perfect, that life is my life, then my life must be perfect. And if my life is perfect, then I have to live as though I know this truth and know that my life is perfect regardless of all this other stuff that may be going on, regardless of all these other beliefs that other people may have or that I may have had in the past, regardless of what I may have done in the past. Because once we move into that place of alignment, there is only now in God. There's only now in God. Thank God for that, huh? There's only now in God. There's only the present moment. The present moment. It's that Ricky Byers song that says, past lives, they make no difference. Future lives, they don't concern me. The future and the present, the past and the future are all rolled into this present moment. This moment, this now moment in God, and each moment we live is in God. Each moment we live is now. Each moment we live is now. When I started talking, that was then. What I'm saying is now. What I say after this will be then in the future. So just know that living right here, right now, in God is what we want to do. There's only one life. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life. That life is my life. That life is my life right here and right now. Let's turn within at this moment. And so just moving into that place of knowing that there is only one life. There is only one life. That life is God's life. There is only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life right here and right now. And so from this place of truth, from this place of knowing my oneness with the all that is, I speak this word for all of us this morning. Just knowing that we are each made in the image and likeness and out of pure spirit itself. How grateful I am to know this truth. How grateful I am to know that this perfection that is God is showing up in and through and as each life. It is showing up as perfect health and wholeness in the body temple. It is showing up as perfection in our bodies of affairs. It is showing up as abundance and as prosperity and as peace on earth and as harmony and as joy and as love. It is showing up as forgiveness and compassion. This perfect life is showing up as all needs met for each and every person. No matter what the situation or circumstance, this one life, this perfect life is in the midst of everything. All things are made new in this one life. All things are made new in every life. This is the truth that I know for each and every one of us, that all things are made new. And as we stay connected in this one life, it begins to outpicture in our lives as perfect health and wholeness, as whatever it is that we need being fulfilled, being met in each and every moment of each and every day. And so in this moment, I pause in this circle of prayer and just allow you to speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer in this moment. You may speak their name silently or loud. You may speak them now. And so for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that the power and the presence of God is right in the midst of every person's life, every situation, every circumstance. I know that the power and the presence of God is right where each of them is. This prayer goes out to anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day, just knowing that God is in the midst of everything, that God is in the midst of everything, everywhere, that God is in the midst of everyone. That's all we ever need to know, that God is, that God is, that God is. And so for this word spoken here this day, I give great, great thanks. I give great, great thanks for the perfect manifestation of the word spoken here this day, knowing that God is. Knowing that God is. I simply allow it to be. Thank you, God. And so it is.